My brothers and sisters, on this, the second Sunday of Easter, which we also call Divine Mercy Sunday, I would like to take a closer look with you at the events that are taking place in today's gospel story. Now, out of fear, the disciples had locked the doors of the place where they were. But Jesus, with great love and tender mercy, ignoring the locked doors, came into the place where they were, bringing with him his own peace to reside within them. Then he showed them in his own body the ugly scars, the disfiguring marks of hatred and violence, which were now transformed into new signs of peace and mercy and hope. He reminded them once again to allow peace to reside within them. And finally, he breathes the Holy Spirit on them, telling them the consequences of both forgiving or retaining the sins of others. So, my friends, what does all this mean for you and me today? Well, I've been praying about this for the last week. And so, now you may remember the story that I told you some time ago about how someone keyed the side of my truck in a parking lot one day. You remember that story? Many of you do. And about how the Holy Spirit actually transformed those ugly scars, the key marks, into signs that inspired me for many years every time I saw them to pray for the person that scarred my truck that day. What a transformation. You see, sisters and brothers, in our gospel and readings today, but especially the gospel, the Lord shows us by his own scars that his spirit of peace, love, and tender mercy can transform all of the scars from the wounding in our lives into new signs of peace, mercy, and hope. No matter how senseless, ugly, violent, or fearful those scars may have been at first, or that wounding. Now, I believe the following story will illustrate just what I mean. There was a college student named Tom who was well liked by his peers. Well, nothing unusual here, except Tom had a large red birthmark that ran from one eye, down the side of his face, across his mouth, down his neck, and onto his chest. Well, one day, a close friend of his asked Tom, "Tell me this, Tom, how did you ever overcome the emotional pain of your birthmark?" "Oh," he answered quickly, "it's because of my dad, actually. You see, he always told me, 'Son, this,' and he pointed to my birthmark, 'this is where an angel kissed you,' because he wanted to mark you out just for your dad. You're very special to me, my son. And whenever we're in a group of people, I always know right where you are and that you are my son." My dad told me that story so many times that I even began to feel sorry for all my friends who didn't have birthmarks. So what is God's message for you and me today? You see, my friends, anger, resentment, rage, and especially unforgiveness, these are all ways to camouflage our fears, attempting to protect ourselves from being wounded in the first place, or later trying to keep the scars of our wounds from being seen by others. We like to hide our scars. We're so fearful of so many things. We're afraid of being out of control. We're afraid of being bullied or made fun of or having our reputations tarnished. And it always seems to be a fear of either being wounded or a fear of having something taken away from us that we feel belongs to us. And then, in spite of all of our efforts, when we do get wounded, and we always do sooner or later, we expend enormous energy in trying to deny, hide, or cover up the scars of our wounding, which we usually tend to consider as being ugly and disfiguring marks of hatred, violence, or injustice that we feel that someone has done to us. And so, like the apostles, many times we lock the door of our heart to keep it all out and to keep ourselves locked safely inside. But you see, God's great love and tender mercy can come to us even when the doors of our heart are locked by fear, and He can come and bring peace, joy, and new hope. So you see, like the birthmark on Tom's face, which he could have perceived as an ugly and senseless wound, causing him deep emotional pain, anger, or resentment, became for him instead a precious and a cherished sign, a mark of his Father's boundless love for his beloved Son instead. And the key marks on my truck that day, which wounded me at first, triggering anger and resentment and even vengeance, those too were transformed by the powerful presence of Jesus' divine mercy into potent signs of peace, compassion, and forgiveness that have been offering new life to someone that I've never even seen for over 20 years now. It's been over 20 years since that happened. And I still pray for that person off and on whenever I am reminded of it. So you see, you and I, like St. Thomas in our gospel today, we have all kinds of doubts and fears. We've all been wounded, scratched and bruised, marked by difficulties, frustrations, and hardships in our lives. But if you and I, like the apostles and those people of faith described in our first reading from Acts today, if we devote ourselves to seeking God's will for our lives, Jesus will surely come to us, even if the doors of our heart have been locked by fear. Jesus will come in and show us his wounds. Not senseless, ugly, or violent signs causing us to have fear or anxiety, actually the birthmarks of faith that bring peace, joy, mercy, and new hope to all of us. Then the experience of our own wounds, like Jesus' wounds, will be transformed by the breath of God's Spirit from ugly, violent, or frightening signs into awe-inspiring and wondrous signs, birthmarks of God's boundless love and divine mercy that instead will strengthen, inspire, and safeguard our faith.